Welcome back. This is Kyle from Jamf, and in this lesson, we'll be covering the concept of scope for macOS. To recap on what we've covered so far, we have already explored two types of enrollment, DEP and user-initiated, searched for those computers in our inventory, and viewed the information contained in those inventory records, and now we're going to explore how to arrange computers in scope for management commands. These commands could include policies, configuration profiles, or app deployments. And scope gives administrators granular control over who receives management. Scope is one of the most important aspects of creating management commands because it defines who receives what, and creating a task without scoping it will have no effect on managed computers. For remote management tasks to deploy to computers, we need to at least configure targets within our scope. We have the option to limit those targets down to particular computers with a network segment or user groups, and exclude targets from the scope altogether. In this lesson, we will focus on targets and exclusions. Targets define the initial pool of devices or users who receive the command. Some examples of targets include all computers, specific buildings or departments, or individual devices. We also have the option to exclude groups of computers, such as buildings, departments, computer groups, or individuals. An important concept is that we need an initial pool of targets before we can exclude targets. Excluding computers from a group without targets will result in no computers receiving management tasks. This pie chart represents all of the computers in our fleet. When we target specific computers, whether they are part of a computer group, building, or department, our scope narrows the distribution of a management task, and we're left with a smaller subsection. We can further narrow our scope by excluding computers, leaving us with an even smaller target. In this image, we have 4 computers in our fleet. By targeting all of the computers, all 4 computers will receive our management task. In this instance, we're targeting computers only in the Minneapolis building. Because Foxtrot and Bravo are in Minneapolis, they will receive the management task, whereas Tango and Echo will not because they're in Amsterdam and Sydney. In this example, we're targeting any computer in Amsterdam or Minneapolis, but we're excluding the accounting department, meaning that Tango and Foxtrot, being in Amsterdam and Minneapolis, will receive this management task, and even though Bravo is part of Minneapolis, they're also in accounting, meaning they'll be excluded from this task. Let's go through a couple of examples. I'm going to return to Jamf Pro and click on the Computers tab, and then navigate to Mac App Store apps on the left side. We already have a few apps in our catalog, but we haven't defined any targets yet, which means they won't be installed until we do. Let's go ahead and establish our scope for Apple Configurator 2. First, we'll click Edit, and then navigate to the Scope tab next to General at the top. Here, under Target Computers, we have 2 options under this pop-up menu, Specific Computers or All Computers in our fleet. I'm going to leave this at Specific and add some targets by clicking the Add button on the right. Here, we can add individual computers, computer groups, users, user groups, buildings, and departments. Let's click on Departments and add the IT department. If we hit Done at the top right corner of this pane, we'll see our department is now in the scope. Finally, hitting Save will apply our changes, and we can see our scope under the Mac App Store Apps page after clicking Done. As we can see under Scope, Information Technology is now being targeted. Let's try Evernote next. After we hit Edit, we'll go to the Scope tab at the top. I'm going to leave the target computer popover set to Specific and go ahead and add some targets to this scope. This time, let's start with departments, add the IT department again, and let's go ahead and also add a building, clicking on the Buildings tab over here. If we hit Done, we can see that we now have a department and a building being targeted by this configuration profile. Clicking Save will make those apps available to our end users, And clicking Done will show us on the right side again that Minneapolis and information technology are both being targeted. Take note of which computers will have Evernote available to them now. All of our computers in Minneapolis, regardless of their department, and all computers in information technology, regardless of their building. Scope is additive and will include all the computers selected. Individual targets don't have to have both pieces of selected criteria. Let's go ahead and do one more. I'm going to select the Mac Tracker app on the left here. Hit Edit. This time, let's go ahead and scope it out to all of our computers under the Target Computers tab. But I'm not actually going to scope it to all computers. Let's select an exclusion here as well. I'm going to add a building this time. We're going to exclude Minneapolis from this scope by clicking the Add button. Click Done and save. This configuration will provide Mac Tracker to all the computers in our fleet aside from the Minneapolis building. In conclusion, scope is required whenever we issue management commands to devices under our management. Without establishing targets for our management tasks, devices won't receive apps, settings, or restrictions. So it's important that we establish an accurate scope when creating management tasks. It's also important to ensure our scope is configured correctly when deploying software settings to computers to ensure the correct computers receive those management commands or receive licenses for certain pieces of software or fonts. Thanks for watching Lesson 47, macOS Scope. Up next is Lesson 48, macOS Groups.